up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers War Room. On Steelers Touching Under, the War Room series is about putting in the minds of Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, as they look to put together a winning roster, and of course Andy Weidel too, as they look to put together a winning roster in 2024 and beyond. That is the premise of the War Room series, if you're not familiar with our War Room series. We've also got Steelers Global Perspective, and we've got Touching Under Boys that I do with my former co-host, Marky D, from Behind the Steel Curtain and Steel Curtain Network. All right, we're getting into the top cornerbacks post the NFL Combine. The top cornerbacks, for me, there's kind of some new names in the top 10. There's some reshuffling around. Now, I'm recording this at the end of the DB day, right? I've had a couple of hours to catch up on it. Obviously, I'm in a different time zone here in Australia. And so I've had a little bit of a look at it. I wouldn't say overall my rankings and grades have changed crazily, but there's some new names. As I say, there's a bit of shuffle, so we're going to go through all that. Let's have just a quick recap on the 40-yard times. So when we look at the 40-yard times, Nate Wiggins was the fastest with a 4.28. Quinion Mitchell backed that up with a 4.33. DeCamerion Richardson from Mississippi State, 4.34. Nehemiah Pritchett, who will definitely have helped his draft stock from a late-round guy, 4.36. Jarian Jones, 4.38. Daquan Hardy, 4.38. DeAndre Prince, 4.38. Max Melton, 4.39. Elijah Jones, 4.44. And we kind of crack all the way through until we get to Terrion Arnold at a 4.5 flat. Now, 40-yard time, obviously it's really important. Cornerbacks need to chase guys down. But also equally important is the 10-yard split, because they're going to be, a lot of guys will be along sort of the lines, close line to the line of scrimmage. You have guys backing off on wide receivers. What's that press that they're going to be able to do as well? Daquan Hardy, I think, helped himself a lot with a 1.5 flat. Kyrie Jackson had a 1.5 flat. DJ James had a 1.5 flat. In terms of some of the bigger names, Quinion Mitchell, 1.51. Mike Sainstrill had a 1.51, same as Max Melton. A lot of guys pretty much around that 1.5 mark. Ennis Rakestraw had a 1.54. I thought he was going to be more like a 1.52. Terrion Arnold was a 1.54. Kalen King had an average 40-yard time. He's hurt himself. They're going to consider moving him to safety, according to Daniel Jeremiah. So that was kind of interesting with his overall 40-yard time, particularly the 1.54 10-yard split. Then you had Josh Newton with a 1.55 10-yard split as well. And then we go through some of the other names, right? So they're kind of big names. There's some impressive things, some not impressive things. There are some guys that obviously have some longer speed in this draft. You look at the vertical from the cornerback position. Daquan Hardy, again, tested really well. Top guys, Max Melton was there in the top 4. You had Sainstrill in the top 6, 7. Then you got to go right down the list before you get to Quinion Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Kyrie Jackson, Nate Wiggins. The vertical wasn't exactly the most impressive for the top guys in the draft. That was kind of interesting. Max Melton had the best broad jump, a massive 11.4. Kyrie Jackson had an 11.1. Sainstrill had a 10.11. Terrion Arnold was a 10.9. So Nate Wiggins was a 10.7. Daquan Hardy there was a 10.6. Just to name a few guys, Josh Newton, 10.4. Devin Shea out of Pittsburgh, who tested pretty well on the day. He had a 10.4 as well. And then you look at three-cone and shuttle, which famously Joe Porter sat out these in last year's draft. Cameron Lassiter out of Georgia had a 6.62. Sainstrill was in there with a 6.99. Newton there with a 7.01. Not everyone did this drill. A lot of guys save it for their pro day or don't do it at all. Sainstrill, again, was top 2 for 20-yard shuttle. Lassiter was 3rd. Josh Newton was 5th. Then you go down to Cam Hart, who I will preview is not in the top 10 on guys that we're going to talk through, but pretty close. Now, if you look at the top 10, we're going to look at the top 10 now across PFN, Pro Football Network, and we're also going to look at it from the perspective of PFF. Now, not everyone loves PFF numbers, but I just wanted to share it with you so you kind of saw where it was coming from. You look at it on PFN, this is pre-combine. Terrion Arnold, number 1. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 2. Nate Wiggins, 3. Quinion Mitchell, 4. TJ Tampa, 5. Cameron Lassiter from Georgia in there. Then Ennis Rakestraw Jr., Mike Sainstrill, Kalen Carson, Max Melton, Kalen King, who didn't test well, DJ James, Chris Abrams-Drain, Kyrie Jackson, Josh Newton, Cam Hart. Then you start to go through the other guy. Andrew Phillips, I should say, from Kentucky, tested really well in the combine as well. Notice one thing. We don't have any Cooper DeJean. He didn't test at the combine due to some issues that he's having injury-wise. Also, he's being considered as a DB, not necessarily a CB. So that's why he will not be on my list. Shock. Go to PFF. They do list Cooper DeJean at cornerback. They have him ahead of Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Nate Wiggins, which is interesting. They've got that based on their PFF grades, which people would argue Terrion Arnold's clearly probably number one, if not Quinyon Mitchell rivaling him. I think they're a lot closer than what a lot of people might actually believe at this point in time. But we'll see come pro days. Terrion Arnold does have Alabama working for him. Kool-Aid McKinstry, as we know, didn't able to participate in a lot of the testing because of, and in fact, nothing athletic on the field, because of the Jones fracture injury that he played with all season, which they found during the medical testing component, which says a lot for what the season he produced, but it's not a shame because we would have been great to see him test at the Combine. Then they had Ennis Rakestraw Jr., TJ Tampa, Cameron Lassiter, Kyrie Jackson, Mike Saintsdrill, Jarian Jones out of Florida State, Chris Abrams-Drain, Andrew Phillips. And you got to go right down before you get to guys like Max Melton and Josh Newton and Jeremiah Pritchett. You go to Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 players. He goes Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Then he goes, so Kool-Aid McKinstry there is number 35 in his rankings. Then you've got Cameron Lassiter at 40. Then Ennis Rakestraw Jr. was at 25. And he was slightly ahead of Nate Wiggins. Now, Nate Wiggins is going to rise up the ladders in a lot of people's boards, given the massively fast 40-yard time he had. Yes, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. in 1.0 was 25, 2.0 was 23. That's Daniel Jeremiah's 1.0 versus 2.0 top 50. So with all that being said, and with all the combine testing having happened, who's my top 10? Who do I think is now put themselves firmly on the list? Well, I think it's pretty clear. Terrion Arnold is the dude. I don't want to keep joking around for me. So Terrion Arnold is the dude at number one. Quinyon Mitchell's a very close two. I personally think Ennis Rakestraw is the third best cornerback, but I think for most people, their ratings are going to be Nate Wiggins is number 3, then Ennis Rakestraw Jr., then it's Kool-Aid McKinstry. Now, here's where I'm going to get controversial. I don't think Cameron Lassiter out of Georgia is a heck ton better than Melton or Newton. I like the tape of Melton and Newton. I particularly like what Newton can do in terms of, I quite like his tackling. I thought he tested more athletically than a lot of people would have realized going into the Combine. I think Max Melton had a good Senior Bowl. I know the Steelers particularly, there's some photos with Mike Tomlin next to him that you can drag up. I think these guys are all jostling for that position and it will depend on scheme, what people like on the tape, and pro days. But watch Josh Newton get drafted higher than what people are talking about him right now. Mike Saintsdrill gets a lot of positivity because he played at Michigan. I'm not saying he was a bad player. There are some things, though, you compare him to other guys that have come out in the draft, and they don't always be the best. They're not always the best pros. But he is also very similar to Mike Hilton, and we know how successful Mike Hilton's been, both at the Steelers and the Bengals. I think Kyrie Jackson and he are kind of fighting for that 9th, 10th cornerback, depending if you bring in a guy like TJ Tampa into this list as well. Who I'm not deeply familiar with, but the combine element makes it hard to assess him. But Max Melton is a much better prospect than what people realize. I mean, obviously, if you slotted Cooper DeJean in here, somewhere between Ennis Rakestraw Jr. and Kool-Aid McKinstry, these guys shuffle down a spot. But as I say, I think Josh Newton's surprised. I don't think the gap between him and Lassiter is that big, if anything, and I certainly don't think that's the case with Melton. So you kind of got 3 buckets here, or 4 buckets. You've probably got Terrion Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell. Then you've got 3 guys in Wiggins, Rakestraw, Kool-Aid McKinstry. You could slot Cooper DeJean in there. Then you've got Max Melton, Josh Newton, Cameron Lassiter in that 3rd bucket. And then you've got a 4th bucket or 4th tier here with Kyrie Jackson and Mike Saintsdrill, if you're talking about the top 10 guys based on the current situation post-combine and everything we're seeing so far. But hey, that's just my list. Let me know in the comments section. Do you agree with this? Is this who you're drafting? If you're even watching from another team, you support another NFL team, who do you like out of these guys? Who would you love your team to draft? Who would you not love for the Steelers to draft because it would help the Steelers open all those things as well? But I'm a Steelers fan, so as always, go Steelers.